Hi all, I have another interesting game to show you from the Grand Chateau Paris, Rapid. So Fabiano Caruana was playing against Alexander Grischuk. Let's have a look. D4 from Fabiano, knight f6, and now bishop f4, the sign of the dreaded London system. Black plays d5 here. So against the King's Indian setup, say with d6, this bishop's always going to be torture on this diagonal, and in fact white might even try and break black's pawn chain with c4, c5 with that bishop on that diagonal. This move signals usually putting pressure on b2 with c5 later, knight c6 and queen b6 sometimes. We see e3 and an immediate c5. So queen b6, trying to highlight a downside here of the bishop neglecting b2. White plays knight f3. But now not queen b6 immediately, because actually there's a very tactical idea white has here. I wonder if you're aware of it to address the b2 issue very tactically and very nicely. If I give you 5 seconds, what would you play with white? Okay, I remember this actually from engine analysis of one of my blitz games. There's a fascinating line where knight c3, queen takes, you play knight b5. So black has to address c7, and then you play this, giving up a2 to get access to taking out the knight here. This is a very, very nasty line. Bang, rook takes a6, and knight c7 check. Very, very nasty line in the London system. So queen b6 immediately in this position is not ideal. That knight hasn't deployed yet and can go to c3 and join this torture bishop to highlight c7 rapidly. So instead, we see, in this position, instead of queen b6, we see knight c6. Now the knight does deploy to d2 here. This is an interesting finesse in its own right. c3 seems to be the most common move. Being able to recapture with the e-pawn and shield. Well, there's a few things about c3. It's the speed of being able to do queen b3 to hit b7 in case this bishop moved, to try and punish the downside of bishop f5. That's a key point. It also, of course, covers the b4 square. But that, I think, is the major point here, because the way this is played now, with knight bd2, black actually fixes the center here. He actually plays c takes d4. E takes d4 with a particular idea to play bishop f5 now. And you'll note, because white hasn't played c3, he can't quickly punish this neglect of b7. Yeah, so this is quite an interesting position. White plays for this punishment anyway with c3 now, and to make sure knight b4 isn't dangerous as well. You know, that b4 square could be dangerous as well potentially. We see e6 and now queen b3, so trying to highlight black's bishop neglecting b7. Very clever tactical move though. I mean, pretty sensible looking. Bishop d6 is played. If white, looking at this bishop, if white actually plays queen takes b7 here, drop the bishop back. If he plays queen takes b7, black could castle, and so that bishop's still eyed. And this is good for black, that position. And this is also pretty dynamic for black. Black's going to get quite a bit of play here after moving the knight. Say this situation is okay for black. So black's doing quite well in these scenarios. So basically after bishop d6, the bishop just dropped back, and black took and now played queen d6, offering b7, because there's sometimes a counterplay rebound on taking on b7 to try and get a rook to attack the queen and hit b2 later. And in fact, Caruana does this. So rook b8, queen a6. But here, it's pretty dangerous if rook takes b2, I believe, for something like bishop b5. This is very nasty. Black castles in this position. And white now shields that b-pawn, but black puts pressure on the b-file with bishop c2. After rook c1 takes on b3, and now very interesting, it doesn't take on b3. If he does, it runs into a tactical disaster. Can you see what white can play? Similar scenario to before. Bishop b5. There's no rook b6 here. If the rook's over here, then there's rook b6. It's quite a finesse. This is a very nasty pin. And, you know, with knight e5 coming later, perhaps, as well. But there's no need. There's, you know, c8's covered anyway. There's no rook c8. So what does black do about that? Black would have to give up the exchange. So that's just hopeless. So basically, black has to be really careful not taking on b3 here. So knight e4. So still, it's with the option of rook b6 with the rook over here. So if bishop b5, there's rook b6 here. And this should be okay. In fact, you know, this position, black could play like this. And it should be fairly even. There's pressure here. If b4, then there's rook takes b4, I believe. Okay, so knight e4, we have queen a4. Now e5, quick e5 break is one of the perks of playing queen d6. Bishop e2. If we look at this position with d takes e5, although we have an isolated queen's pawn, black gets a lot of piece play after this. There's even knight c5, and the knight's coordinating on d3, king still in the centre. So this is fairly unpleasant. I know the mate threat, black addresses that, but still is much better. The king's awkward here, the rooks are not connected. Black's got an edge there. So it's important not to give black too much quick play here. We have bishop e2. E takes d4. C takes. Rook b6. White castles. Rook fb8. Rook fe1. g6. Bishop d3. Knight b4. Very interesting as well. This, so there's, you know, white can't. It seems there's a lot of play here. Basically, white doesn't want to take on e4. He actually drops back his bishop. In fact, there's a very technical point after bishop takes e4. It's not even to do with the knight coming into d3 later. Can you see a slight issue with this move? If I give you 5 seconds here. There's a weakness of the last move there, believe it or not. Rook a6 checkmates the queen, embarrassingly. So yeah, white has to be very careful. He keeps a view on the a6 square here. Knight c6, rook e2, king g7, rook ec2, knight d8, rook c7, rook takes b3, rook d7, queen f6, and this is very interesting. So preparing to give up d5. From an attacking player's point of view, there's a very simple kind of heuristic I think attacking players can use, which is employed in this game. Obviously, from concrete calculation would help. But if we could, idealistically, from an attacking player's perspective, strip away defensive pawns one by one, we'd like to do that in theory. Because then the more exposed the king is, the more lethal the checks are and other things dropping off in the position. And basically, Grischuk plays like a madman here. He does play rook takes f3, but it's totally justified. Taking away one defensive pawn, threatening to mate white with queen takes and then knight g3. White's got to defend f2, comes to defend f2. Guess what? Second defensive pawn might be in danger here. Yep, knight takes f2, hitting the rook. So basically, if queen takes d5, this is a very nice position. f7's defended by the knight, that's fine. So 2 defensive pawns have been taken away from white's king. Bishop g2, but now queen e3 eyeing the rook. So queen takes, we can take the rook. This, have a quick look. We can just take the rook there, and black has a big edge, big advantage there. So queen e3, king f1. So 2 defensive pawns taken away. Knight g4, and there's an immediate threat of knight h2 checkmate. Very nasty. Bishop e4 defends h2 with the queen by getting the bishop out of the way. Queen takes g3. All of the defensive pawns gone now. Immediate threat, for example, knight e3 check, forking queen and king. This is why I like this game, because a lot of defensive pawns has just been removed. It's a true king's crushing game, I believe. Knight e6, things like knight f4 in the air, with the 2 knights coming to support the queen. Queen g2, white loses the exchange now with knight e3 check being played, and his king is much less safe than black's king, clearly. Queen f3 check, rook takes b2 check, and after queen d2, this is very, very nasty, of course. Queen f4 check, rook b3 check. There's just no shelter for the king, and it's totally gone. Okay, white resigns here, apparently. So I kind of enjoyed this game. It was very, very dynamic play from Alexander Grischuk, showing how you can sometimes gambit the b7 pawn, and if you're very careful how you manage that b-file counterplay to avoid bishop b5 disasters, you can switch your attention with your greater piece activity to white's king, as he did so expertly in this game, letting his d pawn go, but really having a really crushing attack there, stripping out white's king safety systematically. So a fantastic king's crushing game from Alexander Grischuk against the dreaded London system. What more could you want? Okay, comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.